Welcome back to 20 Life Learners. Our speaker for today is Nokuhle Kumalo. She is an Allan Gray Fellow and UCT Graduate who is currently doing her chartered accounting articles at a Big Four firm. She is passionate about entertainment and education, and recently she has started a YouTube channel focusing on how to adult. Nokuhle will take us through practical tips that we can use in our day-to-day lives in order to fully embrace adulthood. Her tips range from how to buy a car and get into investing to learning to balance your work with the rest of your life. She goes through all of this and more.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's conversation, which is all about the transition from university to the work life. So I'll be doing this presentation as follows. Firstly, I'll introduce myself and let you know who I am. Then I'll talk about the actual transition. Then thirdly, I'll talk about the importance of financial education, especially during this transition. Then next, I'll do the pros and cons of being financially literate. Number 5 will be fun ways to keep yourself updated. And then number 6, and in closing, will just be about the importance of having a hobby. If you have any questions, guys, I am really excited to answer anything, but I will probably take them at the end of the presentation. Okay. So firstly, who am I? I am Nokuhle Kumalo. I am currently doing my first year of articles at one of the big four firms. I am a UCT alumni and I'm also a YouTuber. So recently my content has sort of revolved around the idea of how to adult. And this is just because I recently went through this transition of moving from being a student to being a working person. And I really underestimated the amount of energy that I'd require for this transition. And that's just because no one really talks about it. Like it's just like some big hole that people jump into. There's a disconnect between university students and like people who just started working. So, like, I have a lot of questions. Like, why does no one talk about it? I think it's because a lot of us are so focused on getting our degrees that we're not really interested about what happens afterwards. You know, you have so many assignments, so many submissions that what really happens afterwards is something you'll deal with when you get there. But the problem with this is that the amount of uncertainty that you are setting yourself with up with is like really great, and I don't want to find you guys in the same situation as I was in, where you're so underprepared and you really wish that you like started preparing a lot sooner. This is why I am doing this chat. So the importance of financial education is really underestimated. Schools don't teach anything about financial education. We learn so many things. We have so many degrees. For example, I have multiple degrees in accounting, like it's a commerce degree. So I thought I was really well prepared for finances. I thought my finances would be good. I would be living a soft life. Boy, was I wrong. It turns out I had so many questions but no one to answer, and I thought to myself, if I'm having so many like questions as a person who's in commerce, how much worse is it for people who aren't in commerce? So some of the questions that you'll ask as you transition from this university life is things like, when can you get a car? How much rent is reasonable to pay, like in different cities? So if you're at UCT and you're moving to Joburg, is the rent amount the same, or should it be lower or higher? So you really need to know what is reasonable, or when they're just ripping you off. Other questions are like, will I get an office? What will my salary be? Do I need to get life insurance when I start working? And how can I make enough money to retire at 35? The last question is really funny because literally today, I was in the parking lot during my lunch break trying to figure out ways of making enough money to retire by 30 because I'm tired. Anyways, if you have questions, like everyone, what you usually do is you go to Google, because Google has all the answers. Google is the be all end all of our lives. But this is wrong. You'll find that Google is so limited when it comes to South African context. Like when you are asking questions that relate to South Africa, either they'll give you an American article that you really can't relate to, or they'll give you an article that just has a keyword of what you're actually searching for, but gives you no value. The other alternative is that you can go and ask your parents. So you can ask your parents like how they navigated through university and the workplace. And as much as their advice might be personalized, it might be really nice for you to bond. But let's be honest, the world that our parents lived in is completely different to what we're dealing with. What my dad did to get a job will not work for me, which is why we find ourselves in such a shortage of information. And if you're someone who likes gambling, you can take a 50-50, or you can call a friend and ask them what to do. But I can assure you that the answer you might have might be either wrong or it might be misinformation. So there's bad information and then there's misinformation. And yeah, wait, I think I just confused myself. But let's continue. By the way, none of the answers on this slide are correct. So if you picked an answer, you're wrong. Stick around. So this is why I decided to actually just open a YouTube channel where I answer all of these questions that I had. So I have things like how to buy a car straight out of varsity, some side hustles you can get involved in as someone who just started working or is in varsity, how to find the perfect apartment and things to look out for because landlords sometimes rip you off, and even things like credit scores, like what the hell is a credit score? I have like multiple other content, but obviously I don't cover everything. And if you do have something that you'd like me to cover, all you need to do is send me a message and I do my research and then I give you a video. So this is my self plug. If you are interested in any of these things, definitely do check out my YouTube video. But yeah, let's continue. So becoming more financially aware or conscious has its pros and cons. For example, some of the pros include making smarter choices. Like I mentioned in the other slide, when you're trying to buy a car, there are so many questions that you're asking yourself. Do you need a deposit? What's the difference between a deposit and a balloon payment? How does it affect my credit rating? There are so many questions. And what I realized when I had to buy a car is that the value of a car really depends on who's buying it. So it was really shocking for me to see my dad and I apply to buy the same car and find that we were getting quoted different prices. So as someone who's like very oblivious, you might think it's so unfair. Oh my word, I hate this world. But you'll soon realize that the reason people are quoted different prices is because we've all made different financial decisions leading up to that big buy. So, for example, my dad is someone who's had loans, who's had debt before, and he has paid it off. So banks know that he pays. They know his credit history, so they trust him more. Unlike me, who does not even have a store account because I thought all debt was bad, which is wrong. So I had no credit history. The banks did not know me at all. So they were just giving money to a stranger. So obviously, if you're giving money to someone that you're not familiar with, you will charge them a higher interest because you don't trust them. You know, the risk is bigger when they give money to me versus when they give money to my dad. Because of pride and because my dad wouldn't actually get me the car, I ended up buying the car. I know if I bought it through my dad, it would have been way cheaper. But you know, those are just some of the choices that I made that I really do sometimes regret. But we live and we learn, and which is why I speak to people about it. Another thing is that actually knowing how to manage your finances helps you in the long run. So you can make your debt work in your favor. For example, I know we're not actually looking into buying houses at the moment, but when you buy a house, it's not something you wake up in the morning and decide, yes, I'm going to get a plot in Stellenbosch, let's go. It's usually a really big decision that sometimes takes you a few years just to plump up the courage to do, especially because banks might actually not approve your loan. So if you're someone who is looking to make use of bank loans or bank money, you need to be very aware of your credit history, your credit score, and all of those things, because sometimes banks are willing to give you money for free if you are someone who is trustworthy. Unlike if you're someone who's going to avoid if you're going to avoid being financially aware, you might either not get the loan, so you don't get your house, or you have to downsize and get something smaller than what you initially wanted. Other things that are pros to becoming financially aware are things like being able to create multiple income streams without even noticing. So you can buy shares and make your shares work for you. This is called passive passive income, or you can even trade online, like using Forex. So Forex has become really infamous lately because of all the people who scam us on Instagram, but it really is a great way to make a little bit of money on the side if you do it yourself. So don't pay anyone to do it. There's no need to take all of these classes that you have to sign up for. There's everything on YouTube. If you want something, you can find it. And then lastly, obviously, being financially aware does help you to manage your lifestyle, which is really important because a lot of people do live outside of their means, and this has really bad consequences in the future. The cons to becoming financially aware are that it's boring, guys. It is boring. It's very boring. I'm not going to lie and pretend like I like reading newspapers. I like reading News 24. If I'm on YouTube and I see a video on something financial versus a story time on someone's relationship, I'm obviously going to watch the story time about someone's breakup. Another thing is that sometimes it becomes too technical or stressful. Sometimes people use like big words or jargon that you might not understand. So if someone starts talking about gross profit, margins, if you're someone who's not in commerce, those terms are not familiar to you, so you immediately zone out. Another thing is that some people like to say they'll cross that bridge when they get to it, which is okay, but just remember that it might exclude you from future things that you want to buy. And lastly, some people argue that they've been or received too little. However, there are some fun ways to stay updated. For example, you can use YouTube. I would advise you to focus more on South African YouTubers just because they speak about life that you can actually relate to. So there's no point in you reading up and watching a lot of US videos that have no effect in South Africa. I'm not saying avoid them at all costs because sometimes because of globalizations, things are linked. However, South African content is should be your first option. Check out blogs by young people. So a lot of people are creating, and I'm really excited because a lot of people in this group also have blogs and things that they do. Young people are willing to share their knowledge, and a lot of people sometimes subscribe to these things as a way of supporting their friends. But what some people don't realize is that your friends are actually supporting you. So think about it. Someone is willing to go and experiment, to be the guinea pig, to read 500 articles just so that they can summarize it for you and tell you about the value. Ask those ahead of you. So we all know people who have studied what we've studied. They could be our tutors, they could be our friends. Just ask them what life is like after university. Ask them where they work. Ask them struggles that they are currently facing, just that you are also able to predict where your life could end up. Worst case scenario, you can DM a stranger, or you can actually just follow certain accounts on Twitter and check out headlines on Financial 24. Okay. And then moving on to keeping a hobby. Guys, I just wanted to say that it's very important to keep a hobby. And I feel like I am preaching to the choir because majority of you do have hobbies and you do have side things. But for those who don't, it's very important to be doing something that is not work related. Just remember that you are replaceable. If you devote all of your time and all of your effort to a company, when you die or if something happens to you, they will replace you before your funeral. So do not be over loyal because loyalty doesn't pay. It's not like back in the days where if you work for 30 years, they reward you. Now people move like every 6 months. So make sure that you are also developing yourself and you're also giving time to those who matter and not being exploited by companies. Create boundaries. Having a hobby allows you to manage your time, especially during COVID-19. I found that a lot of us who were working from home could not actually find a distinction between work and personal life. Suddenly your work takes over. You're having your supper in front of your laptop or your lunch in front of your laptop, and you really don't have a life. Your work is your life. I would not advise this, especially if it's not your company. Obviously, if you're an entrepreneur, that is your baby. You need to breathe life into it. But if you're someone who's on payroll, I'm not going to lie. You should not be giving them 100%. Give them 80% and 20% should be for you and your own personal development. Sometimes your hobbies can become your side hustles. So like me, I started YouTube as just a thing for me to talk to people. And now suddenly it's making me money on the side, which is really exciting because it's money I wasn't planning for. And you can do this with blogs, you can do this with podcasts. People are looking to advertise through our content. The advertising industry has changed dramatically, so now you can actually just get paid off posting things on your Instagram. So just look into that if you are someone who is looking to make a few coins on the side. And also, having a hobby adds to your soft skills. It allows you to be different from other people who have the same degree as you. A lot of us graduate with basic degrees, and remember, there's other universities with the same degrees, but you need a few things to make you special, to make you an outlier amongst your peers. So, having a hobby is something that allows you to do so. And lastly, guys, it really is for your sanity. It just allows you to breathe, take a step back from your work, and just be you, because sometimes your work might not actually be aligned with your character. Then in closing, guys, I would just advise you to pay it forward. I think this is what we all need to do. We should actually just take it upon ourselves that we are responsible for each other. We need to bridge the knowledge gap, especially because some of us are one of the, like, we're a few of the lucky people who were able to attend tertiary, like university. So we need to bring back whatever knowledge we gained at these prestigious institutes and bring it back to communities who might not have access to it. There's no point accumulating all of this knowledge and just sitting on top of it. Share it with people. You can blog, you can tweet, you can write IG stories and open up Q&As. You can have a podcast. You can even perform whatever talent you have. People are always willing to listen. You just need to speak up. And yeah. And then in closing, I have so many closings. Some of my closing tips, if you are interested in any of these that I've mentioned, then I would advise you to do more research about it. But these are just a few things that I wish someone had whispered in my ear, even though they might not make sense right now. When you do your own research, they start to make sense, such as build your credit score today, like today. Open a Mr. Price account if you have to, buy some socks, pay them over 2 weeks, and that's considered building your credit score. Network as much as you can in university. Once you get out of varsity, there's a lot of cliques and people are very exclusive. So it gets really hard to try and put yourself into these groups. So your university friends might be your best network at the moment. Discuss your salary. Don't be secretive about your salary, because this just allows companies to exploit you. So when people ask you, like when people who are doing similar jobs ask you how much you're earning, be free to tell them, just so that you can also ensure that your company is still paying you what is market related. Next is get disability life cover as soon as you can. Getting all of these life covers sometimes is difficult because you're earning so little, so you're strapped for money. But a disability life cover is a really great one to get, just because if anything happens, if there's an accident and you can't perform the work that you studied for, you need to make sure that you're still covered. You need to make sure that you are able to live the life that you've studied for. Because, for example, worst case scenario, God forbid, if you have suffered some brain damage, now suddenly you can't perform the work that you've been studying for, you still want to ensure that you're living a soft life. And then lastly, and in closing, stay in your lane. Do not compare with people. Always make decisions that are great for you. Remember, we all have different backgrounds. We all have different responsibilities. So do not compete with people. Just compete with yourself, and always work on improving you, yourself, and you. Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you to this week's Life Learner. Please stay tuned for our next video.